Hey, I'm AJ Everly, and welcome to my Substack. This is episode 1 of my little podcast series. I've never done podcasting, so you're going to have to be a bit lenient with me. Although I'm a voice actor and I do audiobooks, I usually have a proper script in front of me, and ad-libbing isn't quite my thing. However, the idea of this podcast is to both read my blog posts, but not as if reading them word for word, because that could get very boring very quickly and sound like I am just recording an audiobook, which is not what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for, a bit more humanity behind it, so it doesn't sound quite so scripted, and you'll probably get lots of extra little comments in the middle. I can't promise that they will be PG, but I will try and keep them as PG as possible. So yeah, welcome to my podcast. We shall start with my first blog post. Most stories don't start where you think they do. So the reason for this blog post was to explain why I've gotten into writing, why I am where I am now in my life, and what you can expect from my Substack blogs, or my Substack in general, to be fair, and a brief rundown of the membership tiers, because, everything has subscriptions and membership tiers these days. So yeah, most stories don't start where you think they do. Mine certainly didn't. I've always been drawn to stories, even from a very young age. I think Mum said that I started reading properly, grown-up books, or at least, youth kind of books. I think I was about 6 or 7. I was always a higher reading class than most people. I was always going for the more advanced books. I found myself getting really drawn in and vividly imagining the worlds and characters that I was reading about. And it felt very Inkheart, being literally drawn into that book and being present in that moment. And it was amazing. It was great. I loved just being somewhere else. This then turned into me trying to create my own stuff. It started fragments of poetry, short pieces that I was scribbling between lessons or doing instead of my homework, and they were ideas that just refused to stay in my head, and I needed to get them out of my system. I spent a lot of time reading at night, way past curfew, which meant I'd wake up the next day tired as hell, because it was always I need to just finish this chapter, and then I'd get to the end of the chapter and I'd be like, oh my god, I need to read more. And I'm just one of those people that I can't put the book down. It just doesn't happen. So this led me moving on to doing A-levels at college, and I decided to study English literature and language. One thing I will note that coming up through my educational background is that I didn't quite understand, or I didn't quite learn to research into what it was that I was studying. So I just went with what I enjoyed doing. So I studied English, psychology and music at A-level, and only 2 of those did I pass, and it's not actually the 2 you're expecting. But that's a story for another day. So yeah, I went on to study English Lit and Lang. This is where my focus sharpened. My instinct for creative writing began to take shape, and it simply became less about telling stories and more about understanding how and why they work. This was something that I actually started finding really interesting and started implementing into the things that I was writing. But after college, life then pulled me in a different direction. I wandered off to university to study paramedic science, and later spent time in the ambulance service for, all of my adult life so far, which equated to nearly 7 years, which doesn't sound very long, but when you're in the service, it's honestly a lifetime. One thing I learned when I was in the ambulance service, and this isn't me doing the whole answering an interview question, one thing I actually learned was this was where real stories actually unfolded in their rawest forms. They were completely unpredictable, they were human, and quite often they were unfinished. It was a world that sharpened my understanding of people, pressure, and all of those quiet little moments that sit between the chaos. And what I mean by that is where my crewmate and I may have just done this really big, crazy, chaotic job. We'd then get into the ambulance afterwards, and there'd just be a moment of quiet. Not necessarily a moment of silence, but it might be sort of short words, even if it's just bloody hell. And this was where my mind really came alive to fully understand everything that I'd just seen and was trying to process it. And this helped build my understanding on different characters, their flaws, their behaviours, their traits, everything behind them, because I was, I think, drawing from the people that I was dealing with, whether that be colleagues or patients or other staff members, different services. It was expanding my knowledge base, which was really quite great. But I came to realise that not everything had an answer, but every moment carried a hell of a lot of weight, and this was something that would later find its way into the stories that I have chosen to tell. But now I'm out of the service, partially due to my mental health, partially due to my physical health. Since having COVID, I've had some kind of form of chronic fatigue. I've also got arthritis in my knees, and this has been it's been a challenge of its own, to be honest. Especially when you're in your late 20s, you don't really expect to have these kind of problems. Alas, I do. And this has made it almost impossible for me to work frontline anymore. So I decided to grab the opportunity with both hands and start focusing on the creative side of life, where I've got more time and a much clearer sense of direction. I write with the intention of sharing the ideas that I have with others and building worlds that shift in tone and genre and perspective so that everyone should have a piece of it that they enjoy, hopefully. I have very little interest in staying in one lane. Stories, after all, rarely do, so why should I? But apparently with writing comes marketing. This is something that I've not yet got my head around, especially in this day and age. There is so many different forms of social media, different forms of digital marketing, and it's really quite complicated if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm still learning. But one thing I have learned that naturally when you're marketing for books, when you're an author, Substack is a big place to do so. So Substack, yay! Now I know some of you are definitely thinking, hey, wait a second, didn't he already have a Substack? And you would actually be totally correct to think that. Yes, I did. And it was so shockingly bad that I didn't just want to delete the posts and carry on as if nothing happened. I needed to start afresh. Now I have a better idea of what I'm doing. So if you're still listening, I must be doing something right. I obviously haven't rambled too much and chewed your ear off. However, I am still working out the eeny weeny kinks, but this is something that I know for sure. If you like original fiction that leans a little bit darker, this is for you. If you like seeing how ideas evolve from fragments into something more complete, this is for you. If you're curious about the mess that happens behind the scenes, this is for you. And if you're hoping for sneak peeks, discounts, and hopefully in the future some cool merch, this is definitely for you. And if you've ever had an idea that's been begging to burst from your beautiful brain, guess what? This is for you. So, what is a subscription without some kind of tiered membership these days? Because everything needs a subscription and everything has its tiers. Some posts that I write will be complete pieces, probably ranting and raving about the ups and downs of trying to write a novel, and then there will be the complaining about editing with hopefully some tips and tricks I learn along the way, and then publishing. And I'm looking at self-publishing at the moment because, you know, it's first books. Nobody knows who I am. And you never know, my books might be god-awful, but I really hope not. But I'm never saying never to traditional publishing. Just for now, I think self-publishing is the route that I want to go. There will also be fragments, drafts, ideas in progress, which you can actually get involved in depending on your subscription tier. But free subscribers will receive regular posts and basic updates. Paid subscribers will get access to exclusive... Paid subscribers will get access to exclusive writing, deeper insights, and early releases as my stories develop. And the first edition members, which, is the founding members, but you get to have a cool name, so you are the first edition members, will get credited in my books. And this will be either in the acknowledgements as a thank you for supporting me, or maybe even as a character. And when I say as a character, I don't just mean, yes, I'll put your name in the book as, a student that you sometimes walk by in the school. I mean a character that actually has a little bit of body, and you can decide if you want that to reflect you as an actual person, or if you want your own kind of character, like an avatar kind of thing, but a character. One thing I'm not going to promise is things like weekly posts, because I am going to forget. I definitely have some kind of brain fog, short-term memory issue, and as soon as something is out of sight, it is completely out of mind, and I forget that it's a thing. I do have timetables, I do have notes, I do have scribbles written everywhere to try and remind me of things. However, they sometimes remind me, and then I need another reminder about a week down the line. So, no promises for weekly posts. I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want to make myself feel bad that I haven't done something that I've promised. But what I will promise is that every time I have a crazy idea that pops into my head, or I'm endlessly procrastinating instead of writing, there will be a post, or notes, or podcast, or something, okay? As often as I can, here on Substack. That is what I promise. So, I think this is the end of episode 1 for my podcast. Thank you so much for listening this far. I do appreciate it. I hope you all stay safe out there in this crazy world that we live in, and I will catch up with you all soon. Bye for now.